Hi, thanks for tuning into High on Horror. I'm Drew.
And I'm John. This episode and every future episode is dedicated to all the horror hounds and smokers out there who want to expand their knowledge of the genre and have a good time.
This week we are officially kicking off Season 3 with this episode. Where Are the Monsters is a 6-part series that we're going to be putting out in between our regularly scheduled interview episodes and, of course, film reviews. This series was inspired by a conversation that I had with John here about how monsters seem to be fading out. They're becoming more figurative and metaphorical and avant-garde.
Ooh, fancy word.
So we're doing a 6-part series here throughout Season 3 to deep dive our 3 favorite monster movies and discuss their history and why they're important to us. Today we're talking about my favorite monster movie of all time, the gothic folktale Pumpkinhead from 1988. All that and more today on High on Horror. Interviews, reviews, and the latest news all rolled into one. A lot of people, even Wikipedia, source the first monster movie to be the 1915 German silent film The Golem by Paul Wegener and F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu in 1922. But history shows that monsters were on screen even before that. French illusionist, actor, and director Georges Méliès made what's believed to be the first horror film in the mid-1890s called Le Manoir du Diable, or The Haunted Castle, or The House of the Devil in English. Le Manoir du Diable features skeletons, giant bats, and the devil. Méliès also made A Terrible Night in 1896 that had a giant spider in it. Of course, monsters hit literature earlier than film, in 1818 with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and in 1886 with Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. So my point is that monsters have been here from the start. We as a species have always been fascinated with monsters.
Yeah, I mean, first, before I get into what I want to say, I'm just glad you had to pronounce all that and not me. I was good with pronouncing, now I can't even remember his name, so I can't pronounce it. Whatever.
It was hard.
Jesus, how high am I? I can't even remember the movie now. Nosferatu.
Yeah, F.W. Murnau.
Yeah, he's about the only one I would have got. Because you were telling me it was Méliès before we recorded. I was like, I would have got that wrong. Like, I thought it was Wegener, but it's Wegener.
Yeah.
Anyway, monsters. I mean, as a young child, those are what I remember watching with my dad, and those were mostly the classic Universal monsters like Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, the Invisible Man, and we enjoyed some of the newer monsters like Pennywise, and that's some of my earliest, along with Halloween. That's pretty much my earliest horror movie moments is watching the old black and white Universal monsters. So, and I mean, I just think our fascination with monsters as a society is just something that goes back to one of our earliest experiences we have as humans, is always being afraid of the dark and that there's monsters there.
Fear was always there, yeah, man. Monsters in the dark. Well, so where are the monsters? Films like The Babadook, Slapface, Men, The Witch, Relic, and more make the movie so that there's no real monster at all. It's the human that's the monster at the end of the story. Elevated horror, if you will. While we like those movies and appreciate all types of horror, at the end of the day, we want our monsters to be real, and we want them to be fucking scary. But when films aren't busy beating a dead horse by nailing it in that humanity is nature's true monster, monsters are reduced to a person in a green suit or green foam pads or a goddamn tennis ball. Call me old-fashioned, but when movie monsters are just a fucking tennis ball on a stick for actors to look at, I believe there's a lost art there. One could argue, that I have a major point that CGI is a newer form of art, and they're right. But that doesn't mean that practical effects getting edged out as a lost art, sits well with me. I believe in CGI being used as a tool to enhance things, and that's fine. But when there's no monsters on set, that's a sad sight. All right, well, I don't know about you, John, but after all that, I could use a smoke before we talk about Pumpkinhead, so let's do a strain wreck.
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, here is Strain Wreck, the segment of our show where John and I discuss which strain we're getting wrecked on in today's episode. We got some good shit on the table over here. What are we smoking, John?
We got some Sequoia Strawberry.
Oh,
It's
okay.
24% THC. It's a sativa. Apparently, it's from Sin City Seeds, and it's a sativa dominant strain with strong motivation attributes. I guess that's good for us today.
I got the power.
The genetic offspring of White Strawberry and White Nightmare. That's that Cody Rhodes. That White Nightmare. Wait, I don't think that's his nickname. American Nightmare. Terrible name. Anyway, Sequoia Strawberry delivers a delicious aroma of strawberry candy with slightly hashy undertone. Its invigorating effects lend themselves to chores, outdoor activities, and exercise. And it's known for its phenomenal yield and snappy 60-day growth cycle. I did not get strawberry flavors from it, did you?
No, I didn't either. It tastes good though, but it's smooth.
It says strawberry sweet and pine. It makes you feel uplifted, energetic, and focused.
I mean, I feel good, but I felt good all day, so I don't really.
So I don't know.
if I feel it's the,
Sometimes, man, I
effect of the
think they
buzz.
just be putting whatever in these, because uplifted, energetic, and focused. Says the negatives are anxious, dizzy, and paranoid, and I feel like that's the opposite of what it's telling me I'm going to get out of it. Whatever.
Either way, we're gonna smoke it.
Yeah, we're going to smoke it. I want to bring something up to you. This isn't even in the script.
Okay.
I was watching Nightmare on Elm Street 3 with Nicole this afternoon before
Okay.
we recorded.
Right on.
And at the end, I was fucking belting out the song Dream Warriors.
by Dawkins. Yeah, man.
I told Nicole, I was like, see, maybe this is what makes 80s horror movies the best. Is you had Freddy, you had Jason. They were getting original songs for the
I know,
soundtrack.
man. Yeah.
Where, like, you had the 90s movies, you had the hard rock to it, but it was already songs by artists. Like,
Yeah,
Man Behind the Mask, like, they're all good. I said that. Do you think that's what makes 80s movies the best?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say that Seal did Batman Forever, by the way. Seal did
Oh,
the
yeah, that
Batman,
was
so
sweet.
there's one. But no, I definitely feel that that's one of the things that's missing about that we miss about 80s movies that aren't in movies today is the music for sure. Like especially with Freddy movies. But my thing with those movies is I love how whenever you're watching a Nightmare on Elm Street film, besides like the first one, it always starts with like a quote and a fucking metal song, and I'm like, that's how you fucking start a fucking horror movie,
Yeah,
So
and I mean, like, both of them got Alice Cooper, so I mean, like, they were getting top-notch artists. It wasn't just like some like band out of their garage making a song for fucking
right,
Freddy. Like,
right, somebody you've never heard of and never will hear of, like the actual
and as the
credible
kids
people.
say, they all slap.
No, I don't know if I definitely. Let me put it this way: I don't think there's ever been a scenario where I've watched a movie and 80s metal playing has ever been a problem.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, movies from the 80s. I've seen some ones with 80s metal that aren't good.
All right. Well,
Yeah, I just wanted to drop that in. It was just a random thought I had today.
no, I like that. That
It's
was
a
a good
perfect,
one.
like, weed thought.
Yeah, and the Freddy movies are perfect examples of that. Like, if you're like, I want to watch a movie with some 80s, some nostalgic 80s metal, Freddy, put Dream Warriors on.
And I will also say about Dream Warriors is it's funny, like, it was more just to throw something on in the background after I got home from the dispensary today. And so we throw it on, and I'm like, it's funny, though, because, like, Nicole stopped me. Because no matter what, even when I'm watching it myself, I'll just, even if it's on in the background, I got to stop. Welcome to prime time, bitch. Like, I always got to see that scene. Fucking Freddy's the best.
Fuck yeah. All right, getting on to Pumpkinhead here. Almost every monster is man-made in one way or another. Sometimes the monster is a reflection of the evil of a man's soul and the darkness in it. I can't think of a better example of that than our topic today in my favorite monster movie, Pumpkinhead. Pumpkinhead spawned when Mark Carducci and Richard Weinman read the poem Pumpkinhead by Ed Justin. John, can you do the honors?
All right, here we go. Keep away from Pumpkinhead unless you're tired of living. His enemies are mostly dead. He's mean and unforgiving. Laugh at him and you're undone, but in some dreadful fashion. Vengeance he considers fun and plans it with a passion. Time will not erase or blot a plot that he is brewing. It's when you think he's forgot, he'll conjure your undoing. Bolted doors and windows barred, guard dogs prowling in the yard. Won't protect you in your bed, nothing will, from Pumpkinhead.
Mark and Richard wrote a monster movie around that poem. It underwent several rewrites before they reached out to Stan Winston and asked him if he wanted to be involved in making a movie. After Stan Winston joined and made notes on the script, several more drafts of the script were written. A total of possibly 15 drafts were written.
Damn.
The film's original title was Vengeance the Demon. The movie was supposed to be released on or near Halloween in 1987, but DEG, Dino De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, went bankrupt and didn't release the film. So the film lost its steam it had gained with promotions, and when it finally released a year later in '88, the movie that took $2.5 million to make bombed at the box office. It just disappeared. It wasn't until the VHS boom that Pumpkinhead picked up a fandom.
Yeah, and another working title for the film actually was The Demon Vengeance. They literally just pretty much just straight flipped it. And I have to say, I think all three of those working names, I mean, I'm fine with. You know, those two were Pumpkinhead.
Yeah, I agree.
And I came to this film a little later. You introduced it to me, and I somehow missed this one as a kid, but I still loved it. I can see why maybe it kind of got forgotten in '88, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, Pumpkinhead was the premier monster maker, the late Stan Winston's directorial debut. And it's funny because everyone credits Stan for the monster, saying, of course it's amazing looking, it's Stan Winston. But that actually takes away the credit from the amazing people that actually made the monster that come to life. See, because Stan, he was directing. He had too much on his plate to do the special effects. He legit stepped out of the creative process and let it be made by other hands than his. But the people who made Pumpkinhead were trained or had worked with Stan Winston before on his other movies. Let's talk about the monster real quick before we continue. The creature was brought to life by the brilliant minds of Tom Woodruff Jr., who Stan Winston appointed to play the role of Pumpkinhead, Alec Gillis, John Rosengrand, Shane Mahan, and Richard Landon, with Steve James working on the mechanics, animatronics like the eyes, lips, mouth, brow, and the puppeteering. And I mean, the crew here is truly incredible. Some of them have worked on Aliens and Predator and Monster Squad alongside Stan Winston, and some are still going strong today, working on such films as the 2017 It redo and Godzilla vs. Kong.
Good shit.
Yeah, to get the monster finished on screen, the team had to divide duties. The most important thing for them to establish first was the silhouette. Once they nailed down the silhouette, they went from there and filled in the details. Pumpkinhead's head and face is a combination of all of the different artist sketches that were done of the creature's head mixed into one. And to make Pumpkinhead a different beast, so to speak, than other monster movies, at that time, like Aliens, they gave him a different color and they gave him skin pigmentation as opposed to being black like Aliens and devoid of color for the most part. The special effects team actually looked at photos of autopsies and of dead bodies to get Pumpkinhead's skin tone down. They wanted him to look like dead flesh, which is why he's kind of pinkish and brown and veiny almost.
Veiny.
And in case anyone is wondering, the eye holes to see out of the mask were in the neck of the prosthetics. And Tom Woodruff Jr. had to wear stilts for the required 9-foot height of the monster.
None of that sounds fun at all. Yeah, for me, nothing beats practical special effects. Like, CGI has its advantages, and I just find that I feel like now with CGI, it's come to a point where it's just easy to create, and it just lacks like that tactile quality you get from like practical special effects. Like, a lot of times you can still tell. Like, it's hard to deceive the human eye with that.
Yeah.
At least at this point. And I appreciate all the practical effects. I mean, they can be tedious and require a high level of skill, but I think the end result's worth it. I mean, there's a real art to creating the practical effects that's different from, like, I guess it's more of artistry with CGI.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not the shit on CGI. Like, I don't know how to do that shit. Like, you know what I mean? But, like, I enjoy, as a viewer, I enjoy practical effects.
Yeah.
And I understand probably a lot of people don't want to spend the time to go through that, but, I mean, the practical effects in Pumpkinhead still hold up to this day.
All right, well, one of the many things that I love about Pumpkinhead is that it takes place in the country, but it's not Hollywood bucolic country. It's dirty, poor country. So
It is dirty. I will say that. Like, everybody in this movie just straight filthy.
yeah, so immediately you're able to connect and feel for the characters of Ed and Billy Harley. This film is about Ed Harley, who's played by the legendary Lance Hendrickson, who wore fake teeth in this role. Who's considered, I guess, upper class compared to everyone else around. He owns a grocery store called Harley Grocery, and if you look, you'll see a sign outside that says "Leaving Hope," which is a little nod to what's to come. He's a single dad to his son Billy. Their relationship is genuine and real, and you see the parental side and the goofy side of Ed while interacting with Billy. There's a scene where Ed is washing Billy's hands, where he talks about how his great-grandmother used to wash his hands when he was a little boy, and how her hands felt like tissue paper because she was so old that her skin was so thin. And that was made up on the spot by Lance, and anyway, Billy gives Ed a necklace that he made for him, and Ed puts it on with love regardless of the silliness.
Yeah, and this is definitely a movie you could relate to as father and son. Like you said, Ed Harley really loves his son, and it comes across. Also, you don't see this from Lance Hendrickson much in his roles, and you really don't get to see him much taking a lead role in a movie, which is nice.
Yeah, that's true.
You might not be able to relate long because, spoiler alert, Coke bottles glasses gets it. And, like I said, this family, they're just straight dirty all the time.
They can't help it, man. It's just the way of life.
It's rough. It's rough living in just that area. There's fucking nothing.
Yeah, I know. Ed's business relies on regular customers, and that's not like something that's said, but it's not something that's said or shown in the movie. But I say that because there's no one else around, and because when the antagonists join our story, you see how the country folk view the city folk, so to speak, as if they're a different species. So I say that because Ed Harley has to go to his home to pick up a customer, Mr. Wallace's pet food that he forgot to bring to his grocery store. Mr. Wallace is played by Buck Flower, who's been in a few John Carpenter films. If you know, you know. But herein lies the problem. Billy is left alone to tend the store. His son is left alone to tend the store when the city folk, I'm just going to keep calling them that for the hell of it, decide to make a run on the country hills on their dirt bikes. And
they just kind of like pull up, like get out and just like, fuck it.
Just
this
disturb
like a
the
good
peace.
Spot for dirt bikes.
And the noise aggravates Ed and Billy's dog Gypsy and causes the dog to run after the bikes and Billy to run after his dog. And Billy gets run over by Joel, and he's the asshole of the group who's already got a DUI. And what makes it worse is that Joel's doing a fucking wheelie when he runs Billy down. Like, he's like showing off his skills, and then bloom, hits a kid, But now the antagonists were supposed to be introduced at a dinner, but Stan Winston didn't want it to be their story. It's the Harleys. So they introduced the city folk on the road. Anyway.
Yeah, I want to stop here and give Buck Flowers his flowers, pun intended. Buck was an American actor who was known for a number of low-budget B-roll movies in the 70s and 80s. He was born on October 28th, 1937, and it's my turn to try to pronounce something. Wausau, Wisconsin. So if we got any listeners from Wausau, if that's said correctly, you can tell me I butchered your town's name.
Send us in a PPA.
Yeah, send us a PPA about that. And he got his start in the entertainment industry as a stand-up comedian and musician before transition into acting. And Flowers' acting career spans over 2 decades, and he appeared in more than 200 movies and TV shows throughout his career. He had a gruff look, and that often ended him roles as a drunkard or homeless person. I mean, even just in Carpenter movies.
Yeah, right.
And then he appeared in a number of popular movies in the 80s, including Escape from New York, Back to the Future, They Live. And he worked frequently with John Carpenter, and he was considered one of Carpenter's, quote, lucky charms. And Flowers, he also did more horror, another Carpenter, The Fog. He did Wishmaster, Maniac Cop, and I mean, he always played supporting characters. And but his performances were memorable enough that you remembered him, and that's, I feel like, what made him into the cult figure he is in the horror genre.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he did pass away on June 18th, 2004 in Los Angeles, California at the age of 66. And he was known for his work in low-budget movies. His contributions and his memorable performances have earned him the dedicated following among fans of that cult cinema. But yeah, back to the story. But
Yeah, that's awesome.
we love Buck Flowers.
Yeah, that's great that you threw that little tribute in there to him, to those who don't know. Because I know there's a lot of people who see him and they always go, oh, I've seen him in this and I've seen him in that, but he's not a character
Especially
you really
Carpenter movies.
seek out, you know? But yeah, anyway, on with the story. Ed Harley returns to his store with Mr. Wallace's food to find his dead son's body.
That's rough.
Yeah, and a few of the crew of the antagonists stayed behind with the kid. But Joel, the drunker, runs off to save his own ass.
I mean, smart move on his part.
Yeah, right. And Cynthia Bain, who played Tracy in the movie, actually stayed away from John D'Aquino, I'm sorry, on set to keep the tension real because, you know, she was supposed to not like his character, so she didn't want to get to know him. Anyway, Ed brings Mr. Wallace his feed and asks him about the local witch.
Yeah, now you brought this up while we were watching the commentary. Would Billy be alive today if they were smoking cannabis instead of drinking?
I mean, I honestly, I highly doubt it because I don't feel that you would have had Joel's macho, attitude. He had the beer sweats too. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
he'd have been more chill. And he probably would have at least stayed behind, right? He probably would have been at least sympathetic and not have run off.
And I was going to say, I think if we're going to go the route that it helps save him, he would have been in the Harley store trying to buy snacks instead of being out on the dirt bike.
That's a very good point.
I don't know. I think he's just a dick, and he probably would have ran the kid over anyway. But it wouldn't have been the weed's fault.
Right. Well, when Mr. Wallace sees Billy's dead body under a blanket in Ed's truck, he realizes Ed's intention on going to the witch, and he acts ignorant. Mr. Wallace's son, Bunt, however, sneaks around and agrees to take Ed for the cash that his dad paid Ed for the feed. This witch is no joke because Bunt won't go the whole way to her cabin, even though he's been paid. He insists on getting out before Ed reaches her cabin. This is the same cabin used in Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter, by the way.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that one. That's pretty cool. The second best Friday the 13th movie was filmed there.
The second best. We'll argue more on that later.
I'm sure.
All right, so Ed enters the witch Haggis's cabin, and without seeing him, she knows what he wants and accepts payment. This is the witch that comes to my mind first when I think of witches. An absolute badass-looking witch, nightmare fuel. Even if she wasn't a witch, I wouldn't fuck with her. She explains to Ed that once he awakens the demon of vengeance, Pumpkinhead, to take out the city folk that killed his boy, that there's no undoing it. And that doesn't stop Ed, however, from, revisiting her later on and trying to have it stopped to no avail. Haggis, by the way, is played by the late Florence Schaffler, and she wouldn't eat in the Haggis makeup. She would have she would have a beer served to her at the end of every day, though. So, I mean, pretty cool lady. But anyway, yeah, this movie is just about people making bad decisions. If you think about it, everybody's making bad decisions left and right. Billy's the only true innocent one.
But you could also say Billy made a bad decision.
To chase Gypsy?
Yeah, to go chase Gypsy.
Yeah, I guess.
But Haggis, why does she look like the witch from Left 4 Dead? Or I guess the witch from Left 4 Dead would look like her, just, all creepy chilling in the corner and shit. But seriously, though, this is where we get in that dark fairy tale area with it.
Yeah.
And just quickly, you were saying, when you think of witches, I feel like, even though I don't really watch the movie that much anymore, I always think of the Wicked Witch of the West.
Okay.
When I was
That's
like 2 or 3, like, she legit scared the shit out of me watching Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, The Wizard of Oz is definitely a good one for sure. I mean, especially as a kid. But, yeah, back to the plot. Ed Harley has to give some of his sons and his own blood to Haggis, and then go out to the creepy pumpkin patch to dig up an embryo. The pumpkins in this scene are all sculpted, and some of them have faces. You'll never see the faces, though. Supposedly, like, they were hidden, and it's an Easter egg thing. But Ed brings the embryo back to Haggis to work her magic, pun intended, and the embryo becomes Pumpkinhead. By this point in the movie, we check in on the antagonists and see that Joel has made the situation hostile and locked some of his friends in the basement of the cabin to prevent them from calling the cops and getting his drunk ass arrested. And Ed has a dream. Ed Harley has a dream in which Billy wakes up and says, "What'd you do, Daddy?" And
that was a good voice.
and that's the scene that made Lance Hendrickson take the role. And so, while digging his son's grave, Ed starts to have seizures and he sees red, and the screen turns red for rage as we look through the eyes of the demon Pumpkinhead as he starts to pick off the city folk.
Oh, there it is. Them city folk.
What's your favorite death? Mine's Maggie's. And if you didn't know this, Pumpkinhead does talk. If you listen, he calls Maggie by her name. You hear him go, "Maggie." That's a fact. And also, before I hear your answer, I just wanted to also say that Steve's body falling from the tree was a prop reused from Predator.
Yeah, that's cool about the reuse from Predator. I have the same favorite kill. He just yanks old girl up like Shaq Bomb in a basketball, and then just straight smashes her head through the window. Like, she got a pretty rough death.
Yeah, it's like the glass through her neck is what killed her, and that's almost more brutal than like him like pulling her apart for some reason.
He just straight puts his hand down, just yanks her up by her dome.
Like it's like her head's a basketball.
Yeah, just straight grabbed her.
Yeah, and also though we can't ignore the asshole Joel getting impaled with a shotgun and then like lifted up Michael Myers style.
I was gonna say,
never seen that before.
A shotgun's like getting impaled with shotguns. Like I feel like that's the only two I can think of, and they've both been memorable.
Yeah, right. Well, back to the movie. When seeing what vengeance looks like, Ed immediately tries to undo the curse, but as Haggis puts it, it has to run its course. And after accidentally impaling himself on a pitchfork, Ed realizes that Pumpkinhead feels Ed's pain, and its face has changed from the way it originally looked. Now it looks more human, like Ed. Thus we understand the price of Ed's sacrifice to Haggis, to become the demon. After failing to kill himself, Ed has the heroine of the film finish him off to stop the demon, and to put himself out of his own misery. The film concludes as we see Haggis carrying an embryo similar to the one that Ed Harley dug up, except for the fact that it has a necklace. Ed Harley's necklace that his son Billy gave him. Haggis covers him with dirt as we see that Ed is the next Pumpkinhead for someone else's revenge later on down the line. 10 out of 10. John, why do you think that Pumpkinhead is such a great monster movie?
Pumpkinhead is just a horror classic that stood the test of time. It has a dark atmosphere and Lovecraftian themes, and it just creates a hauntingly beautiful world. It's both fascinating and terrifying. The creature design is especially impressive, and it's a testament to the talents, as we've said, to that special effects team. What sets Pumpkinhead apart from many of the other horror movies in the 80s, I feel, is the depth and the heart that it brings to the table.
I like that.
It does have familiar horror tropes, though, even though it's very different. I mean, it's that classic horror theme of how far would a person go for the one they love.
Yeah.
And it shows us that darkness can reside in all of us. Lance Hendrickson's performance as the lead's absolutely incredible. And like I said, it's really good to see him in a lead role because it just didn't happen often. But I mean, everything he's in, he's good. And the only downside to the movie is that it can be a little too dark at times. Although I think it's just like a minor issue that if like we got like an Ultra 4K release, maybe those blacks won't be so dark.
Yeah.
Overall, I give it a 8.8 out of 10.
All right. To me, Pumpkinhead is everything that a monster should be. And that's why it's my favorite monster movie. It's simple, to the point, and scary. And the demon is so scary, but so amazing in detail, like you said, that you can't take your eyes off of him. I love the dark and blue cinematography. I get your thing about it being too dark at times.
There's sometimes it's a little hard to see what's going on.
Yeah, but when those strobe lights are kicking, like the lightning's going off, and you got the fog and the blue background, it's definitely a nice setup.
And one thing I don't mean to cut you off that I forgot, but we were talking about like the strobe lights. I forgot watching the commentary. They mentioned that when you first see Pumpkinhead in the door, it's supposed to be an homage to the Thing from Another World, the original version of the Thing.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, despite this movie, it's how do I put this? This movie is kind of regarded as a B movie, and it's not a B movie. The acting is superb, and it's surprisingly like, for a movie you'd go into this thinking, oh, it's a low budget monster movie from the '80s, but everybody fucking put their big boy and girl shoes on and acted their ass off, and it's like there's not anybody who's acting you laugh at, or like there's no memes made of somebody's terrible performance. But most importantly, Pumpkinhead is a grim take on how vengeance is never worth the cost. I mean, this story keeps being retold. There's the Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hardy, and how many stories about revenge. But the thing is, even when they give you a protagonist that you can get behind and understand, it never pays off. And any parent in Ed's shoes, in Ed Harley's shoes, would at least contemplate going to Haggis if they knew that there was a local witch that could do something like that. And the death of a child would call for blood, absolutely. And Pumpkinhead is the perfect tale for a late night movie when it's storming out, to leave the window open and just listen to the rain falling. It never gets old.
All right, well, I think now would be a good time to talk about the Pumpkinhead sequels. And there's 3 sequels to the original 1988 horror film. And each one follows the titular demon as he exacts revenge on behalf of those who have been wronged. And here's just a little bit about each one. In 1993, we had Pumpkinhead 2, Blood Wings. That just doesn't sound right. In 1958, a deformed orphan named Tommy, offspring of Pumpkinhead, is deliberately killed by a group of thugs. And then we fast forward 35 years later, Tommy's resurrected as Pumpkinhead by a group of teens who inadvertently perform a spell from a spell book found in a cabin of an old blind witch. A spell from a spell book they just found in a cabin. Wonder where they got that idea from.
Ed Harley, needed to give blood of his own and of his sons and stuff to make this shit happen in the first one, but in this one they just find a spell book.
Yeah, they find a spell book in a cabin, like I said. Wonder where they got that idea from.
Right.
Pumpkinhead embarks on a killing spree, targeting those involved in his death. Sheriff Sean Braddock investigates and discovers the link between the victims and Pumpkinhead. After Pumpkinhead kills the judge, he pursues the teens responsible for his resurrection. Jenny, Sean's daughter, is spared due to her innocence, and Pumpkinhead is eventually shot back into the mine where he died. Sean finds an old toy fire truck he gave Tommy, and Jenny apologizes for her behavior. I just wanted to say, actually, the original Pumpkinhead is the only one that came out in theaters. This one actually was a straight to video, and the next two we'll talk about actually were on Sci-Fi Channel. But also, there was a video game for this as well, Blood Wings, Pumpkinhead's Revenge. Mm-hmm. It's a PC full-motion video game, and it's loosely based on the movie of the same name. It didn't come out till 1995, though, and it's apparently been criticized as being a Doom ripoff.
I would love... I didn't know that there was a video game. I'd like to have it as just a collectible, but I mean, I would definitely try to play it if I could. I didn't know it existed.
I have not looked up. I wonder how expensive it is to get it. I'm sure you could probably emulate. I mean, you shouldn't do that unless you have the original copy. Then it's okay to emulate stuff. Anyway... Pumpkinhead's Ashes to Ashes from 2006. Like I said, this is the first of the 2 sci-fi Pumpkinheads, and this just went straight to TV. It more closely resembles the first film, though, and it portrays the townspeople's fury over the local mortician's theft and sale of loved ones' organs. That's some fucking rough shit.
Yeah, right.
I mean, good for him. He's making money, but like... I wouldn't care if people sell my body parts. You found them.
If there's something you want, take it.
Just take it. I'm not here anymore. What do I care? The mortician then disposes of the corpses in a swamp rather than cremating them. Okay, now I can see why they're mad. When the townspeople discover this, they find old bitch Haggis, and she summons Pumpkinhead through the mummified remains of Ed Harley, who's being reprised by Lance Hendrickson. And Pumpkinhead embarks on a killing spree, targeting all those responsible for the desecration, while Doc Frazier is played by Doug Bradley, attempts to eliminate those who summon Pumpkinhead, and which will result in the demon's demise. It's It's interesting that we got Lance Hendrickson and Doug Bradley in a movie and it wasn't good. Like that's a big miss.
I'll give my opinion in a little bit.
And 2007 here we have Pumpkinhead Blood Feud. Two men on motorcycles try to escape Pumpkinhead, but one falls and is killed while the other seeks help from a man who conjured the demon. The summoner is killed by the survivor, causing Pumpkinhead to disappear. This is fun. 5 years later, a family feud between the Hatfields and McCoys reignites. For our listeners out there might not be familiar, it's Appalachian American, just long-going family rivalry over some really dumb stuff. But anyway, so the Hatfields and McCoys are reignited, and after a McCoy is accidentally killed, they summon Pumpkinhead to kill the Hatfields. I feel like they probably would have did that if they could have. But both families suffer casualties, and Ricky McCoy takes Pumpkinhead with him to fall down a well after realizing the cost of his actions. So overall, I mean, the sequels follow a similar formula to the original films. Pumpkinhead being summoned to exact revenge on the behalf of someone who's been wronged. Each film introduces new characters and settings, but the demon itself just remains the constant presence throughout the series. A reboot of the series actually was in the works, with Saw executive producer Peter Block set to produce, and Nate Atkins set to write the script as an homage to the original film. However, due to the passing of time here, it's pretty unlikely that this particular reboot will come to fruition. The last update we had was November of 2021, so...
Oh, damn, it's been 2 years, yeah.
And as of November 2021, a new version of the reboot was being produced by Paramount Players. The script has already been written, and news of the director is expected to be announced in the coming months. Well, we haven't heard anything since then, so... For better
it looks
or
like
worse,
the remake's dead right now. Damn.
For better or worse, it seems like that reboot is not going to happen.
Well, I'm interested to see what happens if they do a remake because, I'd like to see what it brings to the table. I'm open to it. And I didn't really like Blood Wings. That was big when I was growing up. Like my aunts and uncles were watching that and renting it and stuff. It was the VHS that was going around at the time, and I never liked it though. And I don't want to feel like sympathy for Pumpkinhead. They did what Rob Zombie did to Halloween. They tried to give the monster a backstory where you can feel sorry for them or empathize for them. There we go. And I don't like that. I don't also think that the story tied in well with the first one either. And the TV movies were, the Sci-Fi Channel original films. I remember I was hyped for them because I was scared as shit that they were going to be, like, terrible. But I was hyped because it was Pumpkinhead, But the fact that they were on the Sci-Fi Channel just had my nerves all jangled,
Sharknado.
And, we all know that sci-fi movies suck. But when Ashes...
Yeah, but I feel like they're made to suck.
True. They know their audience, but Ashes to Ashes was pretty good in my opinion. I mean, maybe I just wanted a good sequel after the first one for so long, but it's much better than Blood Wings, and it put the series back on track. In my opinion, it was still a far drop from the original, but it was. And
Lance Henny was back,
right? It was more in the same vein than the original than Blood Wings was. The follow-up was awful, though, and no one's made a Pumpkinhead film yet to rival the first one or even live up to it.
I mean, not even close. The year's 1988, Pumpkinhead came out. What other horror movies came out that year? We have a lot of good ones, and I didn't even include all of them. We have Child's Play. Any of these, feel free to just jump in if you want to say anything about them. I'm just going to list a bunch of them here. But Child's Play, the Blob remake, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, Brain Damage, The Best Friday the 13th. Well, nope. That was. I'll get to that one. Well, I don't know where I'd include it in this one, but Part 7, The New Blood. We had Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, Maniac Cop, A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, Monkey Shines, Phantasm 2, Sorority Babes, and the Slime Bowl Bolorama. I mean, among others. There was so many notable horror films released that year. It's not surprising Pumpkinhead struggled to find an audience until its video release. Although I think 86 is the best year for horror. 88's pretty impressive and definitely a close contender. It's very unlikely you get a specific collection like these movies to ever be released in like a year like this, like anytime soon.
It's pretty devastatingly awesome, yeah.
I mean, 2022 was good, but even that can't like come close to this.
No.
And I guess really the only other really straight monster movie I'd say I guess we got is The Blob. And Pumpkinhead did 4.4 at the box office. The Blob did 8.2.
Oh, so The Blob did like double. Wow. Well, why is 86 your favorite year for horror? I've always thought that 85 was the best with movies like George A. Romero's Day of the Dead, my favorite of his trilogy, Reanimator, The Return of the Living Dead, Fright Night, The Mutilator, Silver Bullet. And I mean, 87 was fucking good too, man. I mean, like Evil Dead 2, Lost Boys, Hellraiser, Dream Warriors, Monster Squad, The Gate, Dolls, Near Dark, Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2, and many more. I mean, damn, 87 might be my favorite year for horror.
I call it that. Yeah, 86. You got April Fool's Day,
Okay.
Chopping Mall, Class of Nukem High, Critters. What else here's on the list? The Fly. Now we get to it. The Best Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. From Beyond, Gothic, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, The Hitcher, House.
I mean, damn, they are some hitters.
Little Shop of Horror, Maximum Overdrive. Let's see, what else is on here? I think that might be, Psycho 3, if you like it. Spookies. Terror Vision. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Trick or Treat. Witchboard. I mean, those are some good ones. Yeah, like 85.
I missed the 80s, man. Damn.
I feel like 85 through 88, you could say, I think 84 was a good year, too.
When people want to say, why is 80s horror the best, just give them the list that we just gave them for fucking 86, 87.
Fuck you, Quentin Tarantino, with your 80s movies suck.
Yeah, right?
But, yeah. I mean, the 80s were still an amazing time for horror.
Absolutely. Sure, there are still monsters out there on your TV screen. The Demogorgon from Stranger Things, for example. But most monsters nowadays, where you actually get the monster, are low-budget B-movies that are cliche and make the genre laughable.
Sharknado again. Mentioned it twice on one episode.
Yeah, I mean, even directors such as Neil Marshall, who directed one of my favorite monster movies, The Descent, isn't bulletproof. His latest film, The Lair, was a disaster, with all due respect. So what happened to the monsters? Where are the monsters that we grew up with that define making our imagination explode and scare the piss out of us? John and I don't know, but we know that you can find them here on High on Horror.
Yeah, you summed it up perfectly. I don't think I can add much to that without being repetitive. So moving on to next week, we're going to be bringing you a review of Cocaine Bear. I feel this is a movie I think you just have to go in expecting a fun time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, a movie got a lot of bad reviews, but I liked it because I knew what my expectations were. I'm going to go back, I think almost 10 years at this point. Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters.
You like that movie?
I enjoyed it for what it was.
I haven't seen it in so long. I don't even remember what I thought of it.
I saw it when I worked at the movie theater on Main Street.
Okay.
I went in, and like everybody's like, oh, the plot was terrible. I'm like, why did you think there was going to be a good plot to this movie? It's called Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters.
Set your expectations right, yeah.
But, so I think you kind of just got to expect a fun time going into that. But then after that, we'll get back to part 2 of our series, Where Have the Monsters Gone? And this time we'll look at my favorite Universal monster movie, the 1935 timeless classic, Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh yeah, can't wait for that.
Is that your favorite Universal?
Yeah, hands down. Hands down.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that in a couple weeks. But make sure to follow us on social media at High on Horror 420 on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can always send us emails for some PPA questions at highonhorror420@gmail.com. And you can check out our website for highonhorror.com. That sounded weird the way I just worded that.
That's all
anyway,
good.
Go to our website, highonhorror.com. We got reviews on there. And sign up for our newsletter. That way you can get the newest episodes sent directly to your inbox. And I don't think I got anything else to say.
Well, I'd like to sign off here with a quote by Stan Winston. The scare comes from the setup and the build of the unknown and the shock of when it's going to happen. It's about, do you believe in it? And do you believe what it's going to do will harm you or kill you? See you all next week.